Hello and welcome to Triage, timely conversations for healthcare professionals, a podcast created and produced by K&L Gates. Each episode is designed to highlight important developments in health law and analyze the impact on our clients and friends of the firm. We hope you enjoy this podcast.
Welcome to another episode of Triage. My name is Gabe Scott, and I'm a healthcare partner in K&L Gates Healthcare and FDA practice. Today, we're looking at the Drug Supply Chain Security Act through the lens of a recent FDA warning letter to a medical spa involving Botox. To do this, I'm joined by two attorneys in our Research Triangle Park office, Natalia Nino and Darrell White, both of whom are associates. Natalia and Darrell are going to explain why this letter matters, what the FDA appears to be signaling, and what dispensers should be doing now to assess and reduce their enforcement risks. Natalia, Darrell, welcome to you both, and thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having us, Gabe. We're excited to talk about this.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Gabe.
Thank you. So, Natalia, let's start with you. In 60 seconds, what does the DSCSA actually do here?
Yeah, so the act was enacted in November of 2013, and it creates a system for tracking prescription drugs through the pharmaceutical supply chain. And this helps prevent counterfeit, stolen, contaminated, or otherwise harmful drugs from entering the market. So in order to do that, the prescription drugs are labeled with unique product identifiers, which permit tracking of those drugs throughout the supply chain. And in order to trace the drugs, all the entities in that supply chain are required to keep detailed records related to those drugs.
So, Darrell, who has to comply with the DSCSA, and what makes, dispensers special in regard to compliance?
So there are 5 main trading partner categories: manufacturers, repackagers, wholesale distributors, third-party logistics providers, and dispensers. And dispensers are what we're going to talk about today because part of the definition of dispenser is very broad. It means any person authorized to dispense or administer prescription drugs, which sweeps in a variety of what could be considered non-traditional contexts: medical spas, aesthetic clinics, physician-supervised facilities.
Got it. Thanks to you both. So I think, the key takeaway here is that the DSCSA is not just limited to, FDA's historical enforcement targets in this area, right? Manufacturers or distributors. And so if an entity is administering or dispensing, prescription drug products, the FDA may view you as part of the supply chain accountability framework. And so, Natalia, in that regard, this law has been on the books for a number of years, and we're just seeing enforcement now. Why is that?
Yeah, that's a great question, Gabe. So initially, there were 12 years of delay and a period of stabilization to give the pharmaceutical supply chains enough time to comply. And then the FDA introduced some exemptions, which further pushed back the compliance deadline. So, for example, manufacturers, wholesale distributors, and large dispensers who have 26 or more employees were phased in over 2025. And still now, small dispensers, so fewer than 25 employees, are still exempt until later this fall. So essentially, the FDA didn't mandate compliance with the act until 2025.
Got it. So 2025 compliance begins for a subset of the entities that are subject to the DSCSA. And then that brings us to, this particular warning letter that is now, getting attention. Darrell, help us understand why this, particular FDA letter is newsworthy.
Thanks, Gabe. So it's newsworthy because it's actually the first ever of this kind of warning letter to a dispenser. Dispenser is that large, broad category we talked about earlier. And this is important because that means that there are lots of dispensers, lots of different types, and they might not have the robust compliance frameworks on the books to deal with this sort of issue, and they may be targeted by the FDA in the future for enforcement of the act. And that's why this is so noteworthy, because the first of its kind, and is putting all the dispensers on notice that you may be next.
Got it. So then, given that framework, let's walk through what the FDA actually found here. They compared, purchase records, dispensing records, physical evidence from the facility, looked at the company's response to those inspection findings. Natalia, give us a rundown. What, who, what, when, and where of this warning letter.
So the letter was issued on April 1st of this year to Pure Indulgence, which is a medical spa that dispenses prescription drugs. And so the letter arose from a facility inspection by the FDA in December of last year. And in that inspection, they found 2 violations related to AbbVie's Botox, which has a black box warning because of the heightened patient risk. So in other words, FDA didn't treat this as a paperwork only issue. The agency tied that traceability failure to patient safety risk.
Got it. So, Natalia, can you walk us through those 2, violations that the FDA found?
Yeah, so the first one concerned an unlabeled vial of a product for which the medical spa was not able to provide any labeling or packaging. So while the vial had the same active ingredients as AbbVie's Botox, the vials were different than the authentic vials that AbbVie provides, and they did not match the chemical composition of AbbVie's products. The second issue was that the medical spa dispensed significantly more Botox than they bought from AbbVie, which implied that the medical spa did not transact with authorized trading partners for those additional Botox vials dispensed.
One way to think about this could be a helpful analogy. If you consider that there's a company that's a coffee shop and they only can distribute coffee from an authorized trading partner. And so you look at the coffee shop's records and they bought 1 gallon of coffee from the authorized partner, but they sold 2 gallons of coffee. And so the question becomes, where did those other gallons come from? And, with something like coffee, that might seem trivial, but when it's something like a drug that has a black box warning because of how dangerous it could be for patients, that really shows the patient safety risk here. It shows why the FDA was willing to do the first of its kind letter against a dispenser, because it's a real problem that's really important for patients. It's not just about checking boxes, it's about keeping patients safe.
Darrell, thanks for that analogy. So in that regard, the spa responded within 5 days, but the FDA still found the response inadequate. Why was that?
Sure. So there are a couple key points to hit here. One is that there really was not a corrective action roadmap. The FDA faulted the response because there was no forward-looking compliance plan, no updates, policy, and procedures for documented trading partner verification process. Another issue was that there really was no factual reconciliation. We talked about that factual gap between the Botox purchase versus the Botox dispensed, and that really did not get resolved. Another issue was operational accountability. There was a talk about a drug custodian that was going to make sure that the new policies are followed, but it wasn't clear who that individual was. And that's important when you consider the context here. The FDA cited that the owner of the spa in question here actually has a history of obtaining unapproved products from foreign unverified sources. And it related to actually a guilty plea and a federal charge related to the legal distribution of Botox that was not approved for use in the United States. So kind of taking all of that together into context, the FDA did not find the response made by the med spa adequate to the allegations that were alleged.
Thanks, Darrell. So definitely a timely topic here, particularly as the availability of medications that require prescription increases through online sources, and many of those through foreign sources. It's important, based on the FDA warning letter here, for providers to be aware of the potential compliance consequences. It sounds like from purchasing products from unverified sources. Final thought here: what are the sort of proactive actions that dispensers should take here to ensure compliance with DSCSA?
Yeah, so the first is update policies and procedures and make sure that there's a process for 1, verifying that you have authorized trading partners, 2, tracking product identifiers and tracing documentation before that product is administered or dispensed, And then the third is responding to suspect or illegitimate product issues, including like quarantine, investigation, and FDA notification steps. In addition to that, make sure that you treat your responses to Form 483 very seriously and retain counsel to help you in your response. Make sure you're including corrective actions and supporting documents and a candid factual explanation. And then lastly is review authorized trading partner agreements to make sure that they comply with the Act's expectations, documentation duties, and escalation procedures. So the key message here is that the FDA's Act enforcement posture is becoming more concrete, and dispensers should not assume that these requirements are going to stop at traditional pharmacy or wholesale distribution settings. So if your organization handles prescription drug products, now is the time to verify your trading partners, test your documentation, and make sure that your response playbook is ready for FDA if it asks for it.
Natalia, Darrell, thanks so much to you both for sharing these really timely insight. And thanks to our listeners for engaging with another episode of Triage. If you have questions about DSCSA compliance or FDA enforcement generally, please contact Natalia, Darrell, or your current K&L Gates attorney. We'll be back soon with another episode of Triage. Thanks again for listening.
Thanks again for listening to Triage, timely conversations for healthcare professionals. New episodes are available for download through Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. By subscribing to Triage, you will receive timely notifications for each new episode. Also, if you have any topics you would like to hear discussed on Triage, please don't hesitate to email triagesupport@klgates.com. We would love to hear from you.